Hey, this is Tina Moenck, the author of the Soap Making Handbook Volume 1 and the creator of the e-course Masterclass Advanced Soap Formulations. I also have a Facebook group called Soap Making and Business Coaching that you can join if you haven't already. And I also have a Patreon if you'd like to join me on there as well, patreon.com/Tina Moenck. I'm doing a series of videos just for beginners, and I wanted to go over certain things and break them down into a series of videos to help you, to give you a better understanding if you are just starting your journey on soap making, and even those that have been doing this for a while and are just looking for a refresher course. So in this video, we are just going to go over understanding superfat. And this is in my book, The Soap Making Handbook Volume 1. There is about 250 pages in that book, and I'm using it for several of these videos. And superfat, I know, is kind of confusing, and that's why I wanted to do a whole video on this. So let's explain this, and if you have questions, please let me know. But basically, superfat is excess oil in your soap, or you can think of it as a lye discount in your recipe. Okay, so what this means is you have free oil in your soap that has not been saponified or turned into soap. The superfat allows your soap to be much milder and help your skin retain moisture. An average superfat is about 5% for recipes. Sometimes, you can go a little bit higher. My milk soaps, I usually go about 3% just because there's extra fat in the milk. But a 5% superfat means you are discounting your lye, that 5%. So there will be excess oil that is not saponified and free in your soap. Okay, so lye can only saponify so much oil, and if you add more oil than it can saponify, you end up with a superfat. Okay, so if you add more lye than is needed, your soap will be lye heavy, which is harsh and irritating. Okay, so you can go either way on your recipes. If you add too much lye, it's going to be lye heavy, your soap can crumble. If you don't have enough lye, or sometimes your lye has gone bad and then you don't get a saponified batch, it's too soft. So those are some things to look out for. Okay, there are also certain oils and butters that have a high amount of unsaponifiables. Unsaponifiables means it can't react with lye to form soap. Shea butter, the unrefined more specifically, is high in unsaponifiables. And this is also why it's not recommended to be used at higher amounts in recipes, because your soap will be very, very soft. Okay, if oils and butters with high amounts of unsaponifiables are used in recipes, there will be a lot of free oil. Okay, so these also have a higher chance of going rancid and getting DOS. Just to give you an example of the African black soap is traditionally made with a very high amount of shea butter, and this is also a very soft soap. Oils like olive and coconut do not have unsaponifiables. When you use these oils, such as these, your superfat will be pretty close to exact. Even though fatty acids can differ from oil to oil in different seasons and everything, it's going to be pretty close. Okay, using oils with unsaponifiables means your superfat will not be exact. So I suggest if you are planning on using oils higher in unsaponifiables that you calculate your recipe with a lower superfat, around 3%. Okay, and I don't ever recommend using a 0% superfat unless you're making laundry soap or liquid soap. And we don't want excess oils in our laundry soap that can transfer to our clothing. And we don't want excess oil in our liquid soap because it will cloud the soap and then those unsaponifiables settle to the bottom. Okay, so however, we want a superfat in our bar soaps. You can also think of superfat as a lye buffer, just in case of any errors on your part or in part of the lye manufacturer maybe, or maybe you accidentally added a little less oil in very small amounts. If you make a huge mistake, you're going to have to rework that. But superfat acts as a buffer. Okay. And it's also why I recommend that you have a checklist for your recipe so that you can keep track that you've added the exact amount that you need. Even though coconut oil has no unsaponifiables, it's still only recommended to be used no higher. I would probably put it at 35% is pretty on the high side, but I would recommend using it normally around 25 to 30. And if because it's so cleansing, it can be kind of drying. Okay, but if you do want to use it at higher amounts, such as for a salt bar, it's recommended to use at 20% superfat or higher, a little bit higher if you're using a lot of coconut oil. Okay, so higher superfats mean soft soap and higher chances for DOS. Okay, but not with coconut oil. It is a pretty stable oil, so you don't have to worry about that with a higher superfat in the coconut oil soaps. Okay, each oil has a certain amount of lye needed to turn an ounce of it into soap. So therefore, if you use less than the amount of lye needed, you have a superfat, excess oil. If you add more lye than the amount required for that oil, your soap is lye heavy. Okay, I'm going to give you an example. 1 ounce of olive oil needs 0.135 ounces of sodium hydroxide to turn it into soap. Okay, and this is a 0% superfat. That's the exact amount of lye needed to turn the entire ounce of olive oil into soap. So to get a 5% superfat, we take 0.135 times 5% and we get 0.00675. Okay, then we subtract 0.135 minus 0.00675 and we get 0.12825. We're going to round that to 0.128. We then have a 5% lye discount to get a superfat. 5% of that will not be saponified, okay, and left as free oil. All right, so that's, you do not have to do that in your head. I just wanted to explain it to you because the lye calculators do that for you. Okay, so 1 ounce of olive oil needs 0.128 ounces of lye to achieve a 5% superfat. Like I said, you're not going to saponify such a small amount, but I just wanted to give that to you as an example. And if you want to better understand lye amounts and fatty acids later on down the road, I do have the masterclass Advanced Soap Formulations, which goes very deep into understanding every single thing you need to know about how to create a recipe. But for beginners, I just want you to focus on just starting with a basic recipe and plugging it in and then getting used to the process. So if you have any questions, just let me know. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.